Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Sue.
And we're here with another feeding frenzy for Spiritual Laws of Prosperity by Edwin Gaines. We're on part 2, chapter 4.
Yes, you got it right. We are talking about what?
Goals, setting goals.
Goal setting, and today we're going to talk about the 10 steps that she suggests for goal setting, which I have written down here. It says, list your desires as step number 1. Do you do that?
Not usually. I'll let them run through my head. I do have a couple of dream boards, and they're all pictured there. Some of them are pictured there. But actually sit down and put pencil to paper, no, I haven't.
So I think I'm going to suggest that we start keeping a list.
Yeah.
And we might can do it together, but
Yeah.
just have a running list. And every time we think, oh, I'd like to have that, no matter how big or how small or how wild or extravagant, I suggest we write it down. And then our next step is list the most important desires.
How do you pick what's the most important?
Well, let me tell you what I did. When I went through coaching with Bob Proctor, we went through a whole month or 2 or 3 of goal setting workshops. And what he had us do was we listed everything we could think of. And when I did this with Tony Robbins years ago, he had this tape back then that I played that would have like music in the background, and he would just give us little prompts, and he had us go through every part of our life, like your spiritual and your emotional and your social and your whether your roles, like I'm a mom, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a student, or whatever. And he had all these little prompts of what do you want to accomplish in your career, what do you want to accomplish in your spiritual life, and what do you want to accomplish. I mean, it was like a 15-20 minute process of just writing, just fast as you could write. So then once we had our list of desires, then with Bob Proctor, he said to go through and label every one of them A, B, C, or D. So A's are, yes, I want to do this right away. This is my really burning desire. And B is, yeah, I want to do it soon, but maybe not immediately. And then so on. C and D were like, well, maybe someday. And then once you have all the A's, separate them into 4 different pages or whatever. And then with the A's, go through them. I want to do this one first, this one second, and then number them. So now each go has an A1, A2, or a B1, or whatever, so that you've got them in some sort of order. So that's how we chose which ones are most important. And that seemed to work pretty good, because then you've got your A list. Oh, these are the ones I want to hit hard right now.
Yeah.
And my A1 is the most important goal. So that's how I was taught to make that list of important desires. Which ones I really am serious about right now. Okay. And then step number 3 is what changes do you need to make? And I love how she goes through this when we've been to our retreats about what do I need to change about myself? Because it always makes me mad and then makes sense.
Is that usually when you drop it?
What do you mean when I drop it?
If you dropped a goal before, is that the step usually?
No, not necessarily.
Because she said something about that for those that she's
a lot of
been
people
with,
aren't
a lot of
willing to
people aren't willing to change in order to do
I
it.
think subconsciously that's when I make the decision whether or not I'll really ever achieve this or not yet. But now consciously, I don't let that stop me. I just say, okay, if I'm going to get that, then I've got to change this. And then I pretend to make a commitment to change that, but I never do. Excuse me. Or I do, and I accomplish it. So yeah, I think that's the make or break point.
I think that's the step when we decide how serious I am about this. Because, that's when our effort comes into it. I know we talked yesterday, the day before, about, we're putting out there to the universe, this is what I expect from you. This is what you're supposed to be giving to me, but we're not willing to put that energy out there.
And I think as we talked yesterday, she says there's certain things you're going to have to let go of and you're going to have to give up. And I think that's part of this. What what changes do I have to make? And then, and the other goal setting things I've done, it's usually asked is, what's the cost? What's this going to cost me? Whether it's financially or a change in my life or giving something up or telling somebody bye or whatever the change has to be, because we can't stay where we're at and get to where we want to be. So we're going to have to make some changes. And this is the point where we ask that question, what do I got to change? Do I have to change locations? Do I have to change my clothes? What do I have to change?
Well, this is the step. This is the step to me where we take into account what energy am I going to have to put out there for the universe to respond to.
Right. And I think when we ask how much is this going to cost me or what's it going to cost me, then the next question and the other exercises I've done is, am I willing to pay that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And a lot of times I have said, no, I'm not willing to pay that price to get that. So I'm fine with letting it go.
So at that point, do you let that goal go, or would you just recategorize that? Yes, maybe I could come back and revisit that one later.
It depends on my answer to that question. For me, I like, what do I need to change about myself? Because that makes me think in a different direction. So I may ask both questions. But when I ask, what's this going to cost me? And it may be a financial cost, or it may be having to change something cost. And when, for instance, I had on my list at one point a trip to the Bahamas or somewhere. And then when I found out the cost of the trip, financially, it was like, well, okay, I could take that same amount of money and use it to this other goal that I just as soon have and be just as happy. And that Bahamas trip may come later, and it may not. I may change my mind. But at some point, I said, well, I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I'm willing to make that change and go forward with it. So it just depends on what it's going to cost me. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And sometimes when I look at something, I say, I'd really like to be whatever. And then I think about, okay, to be that, this, for example, if I wanted to be a doctor, and then I figured out, okay, I have to go to school in pre-med, and then I have to go to school for another 4 years for this, and then I have to do an internship or whatever. And when I figure all that up, and I think, okay, I'm going to be 95 when I get done, is that worth it? No. Am I ever going to pursue that? No. You know, it's just not worth it to me. Yeah. When I can go and be a nurse for 4 years or whatever.
Well, I find that this step right here in the past when I was making goals, this step right here helped me cull down my list, which starts out like this. And I may not be able to do A, B, C, and D. I may have 100 A's, you know, and can't possibly do them all at once. But when I get down to asking, what do I need to change, or what is it going to cost, I'm really able to look at those A's and go from here to a very
or move them to a B or C or D.
Right.
You know, move them down the list.
So that's an important step. It really is.
And then I think number 4 is a very important step too.
Yes.
Choosing the date you want to achieve each goal.
Yes.
And typically, when I do the ABC thing, the A's are within the next year, and the B's are within the next 3 years, and the C's are within the next 5 years, and then 10 years.
Right.
But not always. But sometimes that's a good way for me to think about it. But the importance of putting a date on there is huge.
Why do you think that's huge?
Because when we limit ourselves, when we have deadlines, then we'll get it done within that length of time. And I don't care if I make a deadline for the same thing, to do the same thing. I can make that for a week and I'll get it done. I can make it for a month and I'll get it done.
Right. But you told me one time, you know, when you set a goal like that, you put a date on it. If you put a month on it, you're going to take a month to get it done. If you take a year, then you're going to take a year to get it done.
So I tend to make them shorter than I can possibly do them, or at least the quickest I could possibly do it, because it makes me stick to that more. Because if I give myself a month, I'll take a month. But and sometimes I just do it, even if it's unrealistic. I'll say, okay, I'm going to take a week. And if I can't do it in a week, I sure as heck going to give it a good try. If I'm serious about it. Yeah. And it also gives me a good indicator as to whether I'm serious about it or not. And then if I miss that week, so what? I just pencil in a different date. But you have to be real careful with that, because you don't want to just use that as an excuse and say, oh, well, I'll just pencil in another date. You really try to stick to that.
Well, it's a good balance, too. You don't want to beat yourself up because you didn't make the date.
Right.
But then again, you don't want to keep stringing it along where you never get it done.
But for me, if I get to a date and I didn't meet it, I don't want to beat myself up. But at the same token, I want to be honest with myself. Did I really try for this? Do I really want this goal? You know, this is my life, and if it's a goal that I'm really not serious about, then maybe it needs to be down the list. Right. You know, I need to be working on things I'm really serious about and that I really want in my life.
Because it's the only thing that you're going to get is the stuff that you're serious about.
Exactly. And this is a list of desires, not things I should do. You know, so we should be serious about all of them, because they're our desires and not somebody else's, if we've done this the way she said. Right. And they're also not something that we just feel like we ought to do to be a good person or whatever. So the dates are important. I've heard that, I'm sure you have too, that a goal without a date is just a wish. You know, so we need to put the dates on. Number 5 is to read a list of our goals at least 3 times every morning and every night. And I've never done that.
I haven't either. I have not either. As many times as we have been. And as long as we have been studying them in Wink, I have not read them 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night, every day.
I haven't either.
I have not.
Well, I take that back. I may have once or twice in the distant past, but I will say this though. I may not have a list and read it specifically, but every morning when I do my journaling, I try to look at my big picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what am I achieving here? Because I get so caught up in the details every day that if I lose sight of the big picture, then I get bored and I get tired and I get sick of doing the same things, the little piddly stuff I'm doing every day. Yeah. So if I don't see the big picture at least once a day, then I have trouble doing the little details.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah.
I can see that too.
So I don't specifically say
I don't.
every time.
I haven't ever listed them out and read them. Like I said, I've got
The
2 vision boards, and I see them every morning and every night. You know, so I guess that's probably as close as I've come to writing them down. But I keep it burned in my.
Are you
in my
willing
head.
to?
Am I willing to? Yes, I'm willing to.
Say them 3 times a day.
Yes.
3 times in the morning, 3 times at night. That's
Yes.
6 times a day. Okay. Good. I think. Well, I think what she means here, and I may be wrong. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. She says read the list of goals at least 3 times every morning and every night. I think it's the list of the most important ones, not the whole.
Yeah, it's not the whole
desire
thing. I think it's the ones that we're focused on right now.
Right. So my A list is what I would read.
Yeah.
Okay. Number